Picture the American West in the 1850s. What comes to mind? Cowboys, horses, vast dusty landscapes, right? But what if I told you there was a time when the U.S. Army looked at this scene and thought, you know what this needs? Camels. That's right, camels. It sounds like a tall tale from an old campfire, but it's a completely true, and frankly, bizarre chapter of American history. It all started with an idea that was either genius or completely crazy, depending on who you asked. The United States had just acquired huge swathes of territory in the Southwest. After the Mexican-American War, this land was vast, arid, and incredibly difficult to cross. Horses and mules, the standard beasts of burden, struggled terribly. They needed tons of water, their hooves sank in the sand, and they couldn't carry heavy loads for long distances in the scorching heat. The Army needed a better solution for transportation and supply lines. Enter Secretary of War Jefferson Davis, yes, the future president of the Confederacy. In the early 1850s, he became a huge champion for an unconventional idea, the U.S. Army Camel Corps. He argued that camels, the ships of the desert, were perfectly adapted for these harsh conditions. They could go for days without water, carry immense loads, and travel over sandy terrain with ease. He lobbied Congress hard, and in 1855, they finally approved $30,000, a pretty hefty sum back then, to purchase and import camels for military use. So, the mission was on. An Army officer, Major Henry C. Wayne, was sent on a unique shopping trip across the Mediterranean and the Middle East. He, along with a naval lieutenant, traveled to places like Egypt, Tunisia, and Turkey to find the best camels for the job. It wasn't just about buying the animals. They had to learn how to care for them, how to saddle them, and how to manage them. They even hired several handlers and camel drivers, including a man named Haji Ali, who the American soldiers would later nickname Hi Jolly. In 1856, the first shipload of 34 camels arrived in Indianola, Texas. You can just imagine the scene. Local Texans, used to seeing longhorn cattle and horses, were suddenly face to face with these strange, lanky creatures from halfway across the world. A second shipment with over 40 more camels followed the next year. The Great Camel Experiment had officially begun. The camels were marched from the coast to Camp Verde, a military post in the Texas Hill Country, which became the headquarters for the Camel Corps. And how did they do? Well, in trials, they were incredible. They completely outperformed horses and mules. On one expedition, a single camel carried a load of over 1,200 pounds. On another trek, 6 camels did the work of 12 horses while using far less water and food. They could cover distances in the brutal desert heat that would have crippled traditional pack animals. In one famous test, a team of camels traveled from Camp Verde to California and back, proving their effectiveness in long-range reconnaissance and supply missions. It looked like Jefferson Davis's wild idea was a resounding success, but there was a problem. And it wasn't with the camels, it was with the people. The American soldiers and mule drivers absolutely hated them. Camels have a reputation for being, well, a bit grumpy. They spit, they bite, and they have a very distinct smell that the horses and mules couldn't stand, often causing them to panic and bolt. The rough terrain of the American West, with its sharp rocks, was also different from the soft sands of the Sahara, and it sometimes injured the camel's soft padded feet. The handlers struggled to adapt their traditional packing equipment to fit the camel's unique anatomy. Then, the final nail in the coffin, the American Civil War. When the war broke out in 1861, the nation's focus shifted completely. Jefferson Davis became president of the Confederacy, and the Union Army had bigger things to worry about than its experimental Camel Corps. Camp Verde fell into Confederate hands, and the camels were largely neglected. Some were used for local mail delivery, others were sold off to circuses and mining operations, and many were simply turned loose to fend for themselves in the desert. For decades after, tales of wild camels roaming the deserts of Arizona and Nevada became local legends. People would occasionally spot these out-of-place creatures, ghostly reminders of a forgotten military experiment. The last known descendant of the original Camel Corps is believed to have died in the early 1940s. Today, the only major monument to this strange piece of history is a pyramid-shaped tomb in Quartzsite, Arizona, dedicated to Haji Ali, or Hi Jolly, the loyal camel driver who remained in the U.S. until his death. The U.S. Army Camel Corps was a short-lived but fascinating experiment, a story of innovation, cultural clashes, and ultimately a dream of a different kind of American West that just wasn't meant to be. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this slice of forgotten history as interesting as I did, please give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more strange stories from the Past. See you next time.